yeah, very difficult to trace his acting record, but I got a lot of it clear. It was very, very muddy because his autobiography is such a jumble. He will say what he did in 1901, and suddenly we're in 1905, and then we're back in 1900, and then you have to go trace the titles to figure out when this possible. So, I mean, he didn't remember, and he was always vague on dates. Even something that he made only a year before, he's got it confused already. And I don't think he does it as lying. He was just
too many things on his mind.
too many things on his mind, and he was an odd person, I think, organized and completely disorganized. Never could make his mind up on a lot of things. Never could work for the script. Improvised, always improvised, and sometimes it gave him great inspired moments, and at other times it just was chaos. And his films show it sometimes. As you well know, the medium shot and the close-up, the long shot, they don't even blend in terms of continuity editing, and very, very jumpy. In fact, one of the better films was really Birth of a Nation. Someone else must have edited that and taken every overlap out. Whereas when he's doing his films on his own, you got people getting up twice almost from a chair, or close to it. It's not.
Right.
If you know anything about editing, you should have taken another 2 or 3 frames out.
Look how he's editing. He's editing on a projector. Very few people know that. They think he's on a moviola, and you're literally making changes by pulling it in and out of a crank projector.
I don't even. Were there even moviolas around at that time?
No.
I don't think so.
They put a piece of paper in
Yeah.
to mark it.
But at a certain point, somebody's got to be there with the scissors and make your splice. Somebody's got to do it.
Which was his cutter.
Well, then he must have been semi-blind at times, because he's sometimes a terrible, terrible cutter. I mean, there's even an amateur you would not overlap like that.
When he met Linda Robertson in 1906,
Yeah.
what point is he in his life? Why does he want a woman in his life for?
Well, we have to go back and see how life was there from 1899 up until 1905, that whole period in America, where you had a lot of traveling acting shows. Every small town had a opry house, in a way, or some theater. And you'd have these traveling shows. Sometimes they come in for 1 day, sometimes 2 days. They play, say, Monday in your town, and Tuesday or Wednesday in the town 5-10 miles away. So you had a lot of live theater. I mean, if you look in the old theatrical weeklies, you will see that there are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of traveling companies, as well as very active, because that was the only entertainment we had. We had no television. We had no movies. Theater was it. So, I mean, I know like a town like Albany, New York, for example, or Troy, New York, there were maybe 7, 8 different theaters going on simultaneously, shows all the time.
When did he see his first movie?
Well, he says in 1908, and that's a lot of baloney. Another fellow said he saw it in 1905. He was in a play in which there already was a movie, and that goes back, say, almost 1901. I would say that he saw them from the very beginning. Why? He's traveling in a town, okay? The performance, if he's in the theater and he's working as an actor, the performance begins at 8 o'clock at night. What's he going to do all day? He's right downtown in the theatrical district. There's a movie theater. You don't think he's going to go in and see it? I saw it from the very beginning. I don't believe he would have been unaware of that for more than a few months.
Would Nickelodeon's been in small towns?
Oh, yeah. Well, not a really small town. Yeah. But certainly in a bigger town, there certainly were plenty of them in, say, in Louisville. And he didn't always play, a town of 300 people. I mean, there were thousands there. So he had many opportunities of seeing films.
Let's say he's in New York now. He's broke, and he needs to how did he wind up at Biograph, Edison? His first movie, how did he get involved with that?
Well, if you believe his autobiography, which I don't at all, what happened was that he wrote this play, and it was tried out in Washington, D.C., and it was accused of being too naturalistic, too much like Emile Zola. He defended the film, the play, and but it failed. Played a week there and a week in Baltimore, and he came back in about October 1907. Meantime, his wife had already gotten a job in the movies in September. So while he was away to get some money, she appeared in the movies. And I think it was she, but he would say this, that said, David, they need scripts, and maybe you can act in them. And I think he tried first at Calum, and they didn't hire him. And then he went to Biograph, and they took some scripts from him. And I think his first appearance that we can tell is in December 1907 as an extra. And then in the first week of 1908, his wife had already worked for the Edison Company. And he got a job for the first movie that we really could see him in as the lead in Rescued from an Eagle's Nest, which is a terrible film. Terrible. And of course, it's all basically in long shots. You can't even really see his face very much. In which a woman puts her baby out in the backyard, and a stuffed eagle flies by on strings and picks up the baby and flies away with it and lands on a cliff. And then he's a woodsman, and he climbs down and has the fight with a stuffed eagle, most of which is off the corner of the screen so you can't even see it, and then rescues the baby, and it's very unexciting, etc., etc.
You remember also that she runs back into the house to get her hat and then comes back?
And then first, she's going to shoot it. So she's got great aim. She's going to shoot the bird, and the bird is 200 feet up in the air with the baby. Yeah. So anyhow, then he's there at the studio, and as an extra, and he got a few parts, a more leading role, and his wife was there too. And then the director got ill, and Griffith finished the film. And since he had theatrical training and was bright, they let him make his first movie, and that was successful. And from then on, he had really no trouble.
So how long was he at Biograph before he got the hint he was going to direct? Or
6 months. Begins in June as directing. And then he was their sole director for the next year and a half, 2 years. And then they were successful enough, they started making others, the other directors as well. Otherwise, he made all the films. And much has been said about Billy Bitzer as his cameraman. But actually, most of the films for the first few months were really shot by Arthur Marvin. So I want to clarify something about Bitzer. Bitzer was a good technician. He knew how to make an exposure. He knew how to thread the film up. He knew how to get a good image. Not a creative person at all. He would be like a newsreel cameraman. You set up, you see the boat, the inauguration of the boat, whatever you call it, going down the slide. You can do that. Here's the Statue of Liberty, show you that. But he has no great idea, shooting through a tree or something like that. Very foursquare on. And whatever creative stuff happens, it happens either through Bitzer making an error, such as stopping down the camera, and he put a lens shade. He shaded the lens so you don't get sun when you shoot, which was a real no-no. Today they don't mind lens flare in movies. I love it. But in those days, you wouldn't do that. And when you stop down, you can pick up that shade that's on your image. And Griffith said, hey, that's a great effect. And Betsy maybe sometimes would say, "Well, that was a mistake, Mr. Griffith." You like that? Huh? Very artistic. Yeah, he said, "Let's do that again." So then Billy would fake it and work it through, and then they would use it. But Billy was not instrumental or vital to Griffith's success.